When I say tell people I'm from Tennessee, the first thing that comes to their mind is Jack Daniel's whiskey. But another reason that Tennessee is famous across this country and is called the volunteer state is because in most major wars, Tennesseans have been the first always to volunteer, including the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, and so we became the volunteer state. Tennessee has been a very active state in terms of music. It's called the music capital of the world. Nashville's called Music City, USA. This was the site of the music industry, music recording, music publishing, and the home of many, many, many music stars, country music primarily, but others as well, including B.B. King, Tina Turner, Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, and many others. So when people think of Tennessee, they may be thinking of music. But it's also a highly political state. 3 presidents have come from Tennessee: Andrew Jackson, Andrew Johnson, and James C. Polk.
Nalazimo se na kampusu sveučilišta u Tennesseeu.
Ovo je polazna točka naših dokumentarca o američkim predsjedničkim izborima.
Objasnit ćemo što su to predizborni, kako funkcionira izborni sustav, te kako se biraju stranački kandidati.
Tennessee izabire republikanskog kandidata između Teda Cruza, Donalda Trumpa, Johna Kasic'a i Marka Rubija, a demokrati između Hillary Clinton i Berniea Sandersa. Kroz ovaj dokumentarac vas vode Ivana Bašić,
Lucija Tošić,
Lana Bene
I Jozo Zipović iz Knoxvillea u Tennesseeu za televiziju Student. This is one of the liveliest streets in Knoxville, a city that hosts more than 27,000 university students. This year, political activists, volunteers, and most everyone else are discussing the same subject. They are facing one of the most important presidential elections ever.
I think it's really important this year, really defining how the country's what direction it's gonna go. I think a lot of people are interested in it because of how big it's become. Like, it's not just about politics anymore. So I think a lot more people are interested. But I think that's good, just for people to have an opinion at least.
No, it's so ridiculous this year. Like, I cannot believe how theatrical all of the debates are, especially the Republicans debate. It's just people yelling at each other and there's no issues being discussed. So it's it's really important for everyone to come out and vote just to prevent something terrifying happening.
Well, I feel like a lot of the focus is mostly on the Republicans because there are so many that are ridiculous to a lot of people, like Donald Trump. I feel like a lot of people, it started out as a joke, but now actually, I don't know who it is, but he has a lot of supporters, and so now I feel like a lot of college students are concerned about that because I haven't met anybody who agrees with him on anything.
Our host, journalism professor Sam Swan, and his students produce a television news show for a Knoxville television station. The show covers local and national issues from a university perspective. This year's presidential elections are the first story this week.
That we can be as timely as possible, and the election stories will still be timely because the election is going to go on and on.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Nick Patillo.
And I'm Taylor Gilmore.
The Tennessee primary has come to a close.
The presidential race is heating up. What UT students need to know about voting in this election season.
A line of citizens await in the rain to place their vote at a designated voting facility just off of Kingston Pike on downtown West Boulevard. They know their votes matter, and each of these registered voters can place their ballot here if they're from the county.
I have never stood in the rain to vote, and it's very impressive to me that all these people are here and are standing in the rain to vote. They don't have to do this, but they are. And I voted in many elections in my lifetime and stood in very long lines. The reason that people are coming to early voting is to avoid the really long lines on Tuesday, and yet they're standing in line here tonight.
On voting day, particularly if it's bad weather, you're going to have big long lines, and you have to be there at 7 o'clock. It used to be down at the school, and you would take somebody's parking spot, and they'd block you in. So this is just very convenient.
We're not coming together as one. We have too many dissecting views. We need to really be one party, one vote, one voice. So I think that's our biggest problem.
I voted in every election since I've been old enough to vote. Right now I have to go vote.
Okay. You can come on in.
In Knox County, where we are, this is a very Republican area, and it's hard to predict.
The country's first president was George Washington, and he was not a member of any political party. It was not until much later that the two-party system developed in the US. The Federalist and Democratic Republican Party were formed first. In 1829, the Democratic Party evolved as one of the two major political parties. It was ushered in by the election of Tennessee's Andrew Jackson as president. The Democratic Party at its founding supported a different set of issues that it presently supports. It favored small government and states' rights. The Republican Party rose to prominence in 1860 with the election of Abraham Lincoln, who used the party machinery to support victory in the American Civil War. This building was built by convicts and slaves. Today, it is a center of legislative power in Tennessee. Here, representatives of the Republican and Democratic parties discuss their proposal and create regulations of public interests. They are the only ones who can change the Constitution of the state of Tennessee and pass laws today. This building is a historical representative.
Tennessee was a divided state during the American Civil War in the 1860s. The eastern part of the state stayed very much more pro-Union. The western part of the state was very much more pro-Confederate. So we did have a big division in our state, but Tennessee did secede and go with the Confederacy.
We are on our way to the Hermitage, the home of President Andrew Jackson, the most famous Tennessean. Jackson was elected in 1828. He had a controversial presidency. He was the first president from outside the inner circles of Washington, New York, the Northeast. And he was rough, different. He was a military hero, a general, famous for the Battle of New Orleans.
One of the things he did first as president was to ride a train. Did you know that?
I saw it over in the visitor center.
All right.
Yeah, I saw that.
Good. All right. General Jackson also was the first president to be in a duel. Enjoy. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You are
Thank
welcome. Have a good day.
Thanks. Same to you.
He was a Democrat. The South in the past was all Democratic. It became more Republican in recent years. And the Democratic Party in those days was considered to be the party of the people. The Republican Party in those days might have been more associated with the establishment in Washington and New York and the East Coast. But after Jackson, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican elected president. So these are labels, and they don't necessarily mean the same thing that they do now or did then. We thought of Democrats in those days as being more for government programs of different kinds to help people, and Republicans were more conservative. That's still true today, that Republicans are not as interested in spending and spending and spending, and Democrats are more interested in spending money for government programs.
The biggest shift happened in 2010. President Obama had been in office for 2 years. And the electorate was frustrated with some of his policies with regards to health care, and they really threw out a lot of Democrats all around the country. It was some of the worst losses the Democratic Party has ever faced, and Republicans took over then, and since then they've had an opportunity to redraw the district lines, and they've probably drawn them to their advantage.
the election map of the USA, the Republican states are marked in red color, and the Democratic states in blue. East and West coasts are blue, whereas the South is red. The decision lies in Florida and Ohio. These two states are called swing states. It is interesting that no one has ever become president without winning the majority of electoral votes in those two states. This distribution also affects the election of the president. In order to make the process as democratic as possible, the parties have re-announced their right to propose a presidential candidate. They left the choice to the people. The in-party race between candidates starts a year before the final election day. The purpose is to choose one candidate from each party.
The most important distinction between the American presidential system and a parliamentary system is that in the United States, we are electing both our head of state, who represents the United States as a symbol of the United States and is a symbol of the people and of the government, in addition to being the chief executive who directs all of the ministries and also is a political leader. We combine those in the United States in the presidency. Unlike in a parliamentary system where you would elect from the different political parties that are then elected to the parliament, and then the coalition that has the majority of votes would then select a prime minister. Often parliamentary systems, in addition, would have a separate head of state who, as in Croatia, is directly elected. But in separating that, what we've done is we've created a situation in which, in the United States, everything is at stake in the presidency because of that welding and all that power. And it's why our elections, our presidential elections, are especially competitive and exciting and expensive and long and complicated.
Due to the complicated nature of the election process and the time it takes to complete it, the success of every candidate greatly depends on their presidential campaigns. They can sometimes become hated, and the attacks on the rivals can get out of hand. For this reason, election rallies have become quite a spectacle. And all this is done with only one goal in mind: to win over voters.
Let's give a warm Nashville, Tennessee welcome to Senator Ted Cruz. Well, grab a seat, Senator.
And so for those 65% of Republicans that say Donald's not the right guy, I would encourage everyone here in Tennessee, everyone across Super Tuesday, if you don't want to see Donald Trump as the nominee, we need to unite. And the candidate who is running neck and neck with Donald in the states across Super Tuesday is me. If you want to beat Donald, stand with us.
The biggest surprise of this year's election is Donald Trump. In the beginning, not even the Republicans could foresee his success.
Look, I want to make our military so strong, so powerful, so incredible, we'll never have to use it.
The way he behaves and the radical things he says attracts the attention of the media and have caused him to become a sort of political phenomenon.
Trump is doing what he always does when someone criticizes him. He strikes back, and he strikes back in a very personal and cutting way. He's done it to Cruz, called him a liar. He's done it to Marco Rubio, called him weak. Said he sweats too much. I mean, no personal insult is too low for Mr. Trump to hurl at his opponent.
In what Donald Trump, in terms of more conservative or traditional American voters, or people who have not been part of the process, he has been able to tap into their frustration and their anger at both political parties.
That is the way the establishment works. In other words, you create a situation where it is impossible for the people to stand up and have a voice.
Bernie Sanders is the candidate who wins the sympathy of some Democratic voters, especially young people, who are highly dissatisfied with the current situation.
I feel like he has he has our interest in mind, and he actually cares about like college tuition and finding ways to pay for it instead of just saying things. Like, I feel like with Hillary, I feel like she tries to appeal to college students, but doesn't actually care about what we want. She's just kind of like, oh, I'm hip, and I say things that you say.
We spoke to journalists working at WETV-FTV news channel in Nashville, who are also surprised by the development of the pre-elections.
In the morning,
you are seeing someone who says he's a socialist, Bernie Sanders. That's amazing. And then you're seeing Donald Trump, who's saying some things that really haven't been said, but maybe people feel in some areas of the country. So you are really seeing the extremes this year in a way that I think it shows the frustration that's out there in both parties.
Right now you see a hard left candidate like Sanders, and the left in this country has not really been a force in a long time. I mean, the Democratic presidents that we've had who are supposed to represent a liberal constituency have been pretty moderate. Even Barack Obama, who gets accused of being a socialist and all sorts of things, pretty moderate as far as what I think people who are on the left really want out of our government.
The Bernie campaign is sort of anti, but it's anti-corporate, anti-power structure, and that's very different. And I think it's very healthy. I think that will bring some needed issues into the race, even if he doesn't become the Democratic nominee. But that has appealed to a lot of young people and brought them into the process. I hope they stay and don't get turned off.
The turnout of young people on the last presidential election was less than 30%. The reason for that might be the complexity of the political system, insufficient information or lack of interest in politics.
I feel like I wasn't raised in a family where politics were a big part, so I'm uninformed. If I had taken, politics classes and stuff and had a better understanding of everything, then I feel like my opinion would be more justified. Right now, it would just be like me pushing a button with my eyes closed.
In order to activate their colleagues into election process, politically active students from the University of Tennessee organize debates. They are introducing their colleagues to the candidates and their parties.
We don't care if we're, getting people registered that are Democrats. We don't care if they're Libertarians or Republicans. We just want people to get out there. The fact that I think last election cycle we had 23% of millennials voting it's embarrassing. We are the future. We are the ones that are going to be dealing with the repercussions of the next person elected, and the fact that we are so apathetic that we can't get out there to vote, that's just something that we're mainly trying to fight against.
The American dream is about being able to decide what kind of life you want to live and have the opportunity to actually achieve it. If we ever lose the American dream, we'll stop being a special country.
Nalazimo se na aerodromu u Knoxvilleu na kojem je predizborni skup Marka Rubija, jednog od republikanskih kandidata. Njegovi pristalice nadaju se da će upravo on zaustaviti dominaciju Donalda Trumpa, koji trenutačno predvodi utrku.
When I am president of the United States, we will undertake a Reagan-style rebuilding of the United States military. When I'm president of the United States, we will have a real war on terror. We don't want war, we want peace. But in order to achieve peace, you must defeat the enemies of peace.
We want to thank all of our delegates. If you're a delegate for Marco Rubio on tomorrow's ballot, raise your hand.
He was raised during the time of Reagan, and he saw what a beautiful country that we had and all the wonderful things that Reagan did. And I think that he has a lot of respect for him, and that he wants to take a lot of that ideology that Reagan had and turn our country around.
During 2 weeks, 3 Republican candidates held their rallies in Knoxville and Nashville to make sure that the journalists and the public received truthful information. PolitiFact from Washington checks every fact that the candidate said immediately after the end of the rally.
When debates happen,
one of the main things that we're doing is we're listening to what they say, and these guys tend to repeat their same statements. So that means there's a high probability that whatever they say in a debate, they've said before. And during a debate, we will sort of take another run at the original fact check, update it a little bit, and we will post it that night or shortly after.
Unlike the Republicans and their mass rallies, few supporters along the road in Knoxville are seeking support for the only female candidate.
I really think she's the most qualified candidate that this country has ever seen for president. She's been First Lady, she's been Secretary of State, she's been Senator. You can't get better than that.
Well, Hillary talks about many issues. She doesn't just talk about the economy. She doesn't just talk about Wall Street. She's not a one-issue candidate. Hillary is one of those candidates that talks about every issue, including research for Alzheimer's, including helping continue President Obama and Vice President Biden's initiative to find a cure for cancer.
So these 12 states where Super Tuesday is occurring want to kind of move the candidates along so that we're not just an afterthought here in this part of the country. And the big states seem to be the ones that really are the most influential, but by these 12 smaller states, some of them not so small like Texas, but the southern states will send a message to the rest of the country saying this is who we support for either the Republican nominee or the Democratic nominee.
Super Tuesday refers informally to one or more Tuesdays early in the United States primary season when the greatest number of US states hold primary elections. The whole procedure can be defined as an indirect election. That is the reason why they not only vote for the person who will fight for the position of the presidential candidate, but they also choose the delegates, the people who represent the candidate at the National Convention.
The two basic ways that they do this is, one, on a designated day, voters in that state will go to vote in what's called a primary election. And based on the primary election, delegates supporting different, in this case I'm talking about the Republicans, different Republicans will get to go based on a statewide vote of Republicans. The Democrats will hold a primary, usually these primaries on the same date in most states, but in some states they actually separate.
Srednja škola u Farragatu, nedaleko Knoxvillea, jedno je od najfrekventnijih biračkih mjesta. U redu se čeka I do 2 sata.
The already complex system of elections has been additionally slowed down with technology. Every voter chooses one presidential candidate and delegates who will represent him at the National Convention.
Education, taxes, and health care. Those are the main 3 issues that I'm concerned about, that I want changed.
I think that our country has been in this state of not really knowing who we are, and we've been trying to figure that out for a while. I mean, in my personal opinion, we don't really have a great candidate, and I think that a lot of people are voting with their middle finger because people are angry. And I think that we just need to get out and vote because we need decency in the United States.
Most people who take an interest, yes, they can become informed by networking with their friends, by reading, and by becoming a part of the political process, which is very important for everyone. Because if you don't understand the process, then of course you're not going to be informed and you might make the wrong decisions.
This election year is interesting not only to the voters but to journalists as well. Distinctive candidates have no problem filling newspapers, radio shows and television programs. For Marta Jennings, a producer at WVBIR Network, this is going to be an exhausting night.
Race are very important. All things that we are covering that night from a national and a local perspective are our viewers will want that information quickly. We want it to be first, but we want to be correct. So that's something that we will be following very, very closely on both a Republican and a Democratic side to get them the information as fast as we can. We will use social media as a tool to reach them first. We're going to have a lot going on from a social media perspective, sometimes before it will ever hit television. And as soon as we can get on television, we will, but that's something where a lot of this is going to happen on our phones and online. Very, very important for us.
After the polls are closed, leaders and members of the parties move to their election headquarters. Everyone is impatiently waiting for only one thing: the results.
I think that we're going to see where we really stand. This is kind of giving us a reaction of where are the people voting, what are they doing, which is kind of gives you a head up. So you know by the end of this evening what you need to do in November.
I'm scared for the Republicans. I think they have a very dangerous and disruptive nominee who will split the American electorate, a man who's got all the characteristics of a demagogue, a narcissist, and a fascist.
The Republican headquarters in Knoxville. Although many notables from the Republican Party are here tonight, Trump's supporters were awaiting his victory somewhere else.
Trump is winning every race across the country in all the Republican primaries. You're seeing a lot of new folks voting, and so it's an exciting time in our country.
That day, 20 southern states voted and the dominance of the Republican Party was confirmed. According to the post-election reports, almost 2/3 of the voters who came out to the polls that day gave their vote to one of the Republican candidates. In Tennessee, Donald Trump convincingly won with 33 out of 58 delegates, and in Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton with 44 out of 67.
Glasovi iz 50 američkih država svake 4 godine odlučuju tko ovdje stanuje.
Predsjednik Obama se sprema na Kubu, a neki drugi vode žestoku kampanju za nominaciju unutar Republikanske i Demokratske stranke.
Ovi predsjednički izbori su po mnogo čemu posebni.
Budućeg predsjednika mogao bi odrediti odnos prema Washingtonu.
Political center of the USA, the place where many decisions are made on a federal level. But for many Americans, it is the symbol of political elites who make all the decision.
Washington was created at the suggestion of George Washington to be the district where the federal government, the seat of the federal government would be. And because they didn't want the seat of government to be subject to partisan divisions, residents of Washington were given no voting rights. So when you go around town, you'll notice that the license plates for the District of Columbia say taxation without representation. And that's because we're taxed. We pay taxes like every other citizen of the U.S., but we have no member of the Congress, no U.S. senator. We have no say in the judges that are appointed to, to preside over the courts in the District of Columbia. So it's pretty funny. Here we are in the most powerful city on earth, and we as citizens don't have all the rights that our fellow citizens enjoy.
One of many unique situations from this year's presidential election is the resistance towards Washington as the center of the political power.
One of the biggest movements in politics in this country right now is this overall mistrust of people who have been in government. The feeling that they've been in government, if they haven't fixed the problems, then they don't belong in government. So people have started looking more and more to say we want people who aren't experienced. And for what it's worth, President Obama did not come to office with a lot of experience. He had a very limited range of experience when he came in.
Mnoga je iznenadila vijest da će obitelj Obama ostati živjeti u Washingtonu i kada novi predsjednik useli u Bijelu kuću. Rijetkost je da američki predsjednik ostaje u glavnom gradu SAD-a nakon isteka mandata. Obama ovdje ostaju dok im mlađa kći Saša ne završi srednju školu. Pa meni se čini da se najviše od svega promijenio ton. Nikada prije nisu predsjednički kandidati na takvoj razini razgovarali jedan s drugim. Nikada prije nisu spominjali, evo moram tako reći, veličinu nečije muškosti kao argument za ulazak u Bijelu kuću. Promijenio se ton i ovo je prvi ciklus u kojem su zapravo republikanski kandidati ukrali show.
This year's presidential election has been described as one of the most interesting races for the White House ever. Republicans and Democrats will present their candidates at the National Convention at the end of July. The presidential campaign and the fight for the votes will then continue until the 8th of November. On that day, American citizens will choose the person who will inherit Barack Obama's place as one of the most influential positions not only in the country but in the world.
Gledali ste dokumentarnu reportažu o utrci za američkog predsjednika.
U potrazi za odgovorom bili smo u Nashvilleu, Knoxvilleu i Washingtonu.
Pokušali smo rasvijetliti kako Amerikanci biraju svojeg predsjedničkog kandidata.
Iz Amerike za televiziju Student, Lucija Tošić,
Jozo Josipović,
Lana Bene
i Ivana Bašić.
American politics over the last generation has become far more polarized based on ideology.
But what's driving it on each side is people who feel like the system as it exists is not serving the public well.
Oftentimes in politics, the landscape will change. It can change very quickly and happens unexpectedly.
I'm not sure that it's going to be over very soon on either side.
Nothing in politics is forever.